A word that you will hear often discussed when talking about mental illness or suicide is the word stigma. Stigma actually comes from a Greek word which means a mark or a dot made by a sharp object. When we're talking about the stigma that surrounds mental illness and suicide, we're talking about the way that our society tends to label, mark, or brand people who experience mental health challenges and or suicidal thoughts. Breaking down stigma means changing the way that we talk about mental illness and removing some of those marks or labels. Mental illness and suicide are more common than many people think. An analogy that I like to use to explain stigma is this. If you've ever been to the beach and looked out at the ocean, you know how beautiful, calm, and pristine the water can be. If you've ever been near the ocean during a storm, or if you've even seen videos of hurricane or tsunami type waves, you know that water has a terrifying and powerful potential. Human suffering is much like the ocean. What can one moment appear to be calm and peaceful can the next moment be something that is powerful, churning, and even deadly. Stigma tells us to believe that mental health is always like that calm ocean, that there are never any churning tides or changing currents. Stigma tells us to only look at what's on the surface and ignore anything that may be going on underneath. If we take the time to learn, listen, and gain perspective, we will be able to understand that what stigma tells us is not true, that mental health challenges are more common than many people realize, and we will be able to reach out to help those who may be suffering in silence around us. As you watch the following interviews, please notice how stigma affected the experiences of these individuals.
One of the ways that I see stigma affect the clients that I work with is in their responses. So a lot of the times my clients will preface things with, I don't want you to think I'm crazy, but we've come a long way from institutional days, but there are still a lot of inadvertent or hidden oppressive policies in our society. A lot of individuals are afraid to talk about their mental health because they don't want to be labeled as crazy. They don't want to be labeled as unstable, and they don't want other people to view them negatively because of the way that mental health is portrayed in the media. Although our policies have changed and we no longer shackle people with schizophrenia, we do it without recognizing it. A lot of folks who are diagnosed with severe and persistent mental illness, they internalize the stigma of being crazy because they've been labeled crazy by movies, or they've been labeled crazy by their peers or people in the community. We see people when they're at their most vulnerable. But when I go into work, I put my hat on, my therapist hat, but I also put on my hat of being a human. My clients are human. Because someone has been diagnosed with a mental health diagnosis, it doesn't change who they are on the inside.
I remember one time I went to a friend's house. We were all talking, and a student at a neighboring school had died by suicide, and the group of friends was discussing it. And I just remember them saying, "Oh, that's just so selfish. Like, how weak you must be to succumb like that and to just give up." All of them agreed, oh, I would never commit suicide no matter how much pain I was in. And I just sat there, and I was planning on killing myself that night. I'm just I'm weak, I'm less than. I've never been overtly discriminated against, because I think one of the most poignant experiences I've had was I was dating this kid, and he texted me, and I was gone for a whole week, so he was kind of concerned. So he asked me what was up. I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I was at the hospital." And he's like, "Oh no, what happened?" And I said I tried to kill myself. And I never heard from him again. So he probably just didn't know how to handle it, but I think it was definitely because it was suicide. If I was just sick, it's okay. I was just in the hospital, but I was in a mental health unit and I tried to commit suicide, so I really did have to fight every day and to heal and to not succumb to the suicidal thoughts. So I couldn't do anything by myself. I couldn't go out in public. Yeah, I was like a child again. Over the next couple months, I had to really work. I really struggled and went to a lot of therapy, just worked really hard and was eventually able to function again. Yeah, I ended up going back to school a little bit. I went to the local community college because I couldn't handle high school. Yeah, it took a long time, but I eventually got some relief and hope and was able to move a little forward. I still thought about suicide quite a bit, but less and less. And I was able to retrain my brain so that instead of it being just the way out, it's just like not an option anymore. It was really just my mom and me during that time. I had like a whole family living with us, but I really just clung to her, and it was kind of just us in that little corner of our house. I was in her bed and she was in her office, and I don't know, it seemed like the world was just us for a little bit, which I needed it to be. She asked me so many questions, so I never had to ask for help. That was really helpful. She first saw the signs that I wasn't okay way before it got bad. And I've always been pretty close with my mom, and I'm really open, so that was really helpful. I first was telling her that I felt really distant from my body, and so she got me into therapy, which changed I don't know what my life would be like if she hadn't have done that. The first time I started cutting, the first day, she saw them. They were just like teeny little marks. They could have been anything, but she like saw them and knew exactly what they were. And she knew I was in trouble. And she asked what I had done and was just really supportive and loving, just like grabbed me and let me sob. And I didn't feel judged by her, which was really necessary for me at the time. I really needed that.
So, suicide? Wow, I didn't expect to get so emotional so fast. Suicide has affected my life because I have lost both of my brothers. We lost my younger brother 7 years ago. He was 14 when we lost him. And then we lost my older brother 3 years after that. And he was 26 when he died. The day we lost my little brother, I felt my world shatter. He was my little buddy. I mean, he was about 6 years younger than me. And I just really took him under my wing. He was just like my little guy. I read him stories every night, and in a lot of ways we were best friends. And we had just a very special connection that even though we were distanced in age, it just, I don't know, he had this way of like knowing. It was like this extra sense. He knew if I was having a bad day, and he would just like bring me a Diet Coke. And like these little things about him that, I don't know, he always was looking out for everyone around him. And he was really, really funny. It was very unique. And then he just suddenly was gone. And I didn't know how to go on. And I would wake up every morning and I would go, it's real. He is still gone. And I remember one day, it was a day I just didn't want to get out of bed. I just thought, I can't do this. So I went upstairs and my mom was in the kitchen and looked at her and I said, Mom, I don't want to get out of bed anymore. And she looked at me and she said, you don't have to, and everyone will understand. Everyone will look at you and say, I couldn't get out of bed either if I lost my brother. Or you can get out of bed and no one will understand. But it's your choice. You can choose if you want to get out of bed or not. And you can let people understand, or you can let people have no idea how you could possibly do it. But you do what you need to. And I have gotten out of bed every day since then. I decided to do a study abroad in Germany. And I was really, really excited. We went to the Netherlands and to the international criminal courts, and we were going to go to Germany and learn about the Holocaust and how it shaped international law. And so I went, and my older brother, when he's like, Shay, I'm so jealous. I'm so happy for you. You know, you get a cup of coffee for me there, and you just go and enjoy this. This is so cool. And I didn't know. He bragged about me to his friends, but to me, he was like, you know, typical older brother. And, you know, and then he said, you know, and if anyone tries to mess with you while you're there, you tell me, and I will be on the next flight, and I will, you know, go kick some, fill in the word there. And I've got your back, you know. I was there a little over a week, and, you know, we had gone to the local museum, and so we stopped for dinner, and we have this meal, and we're having fun, and we get back to the hotel and get connected to the Wi-Fi, and my roommate looks at me, and she goes, did you get this email? And I go, no, I hadn't checked my phone yet. And she's like, they're trying to get a hold of you. And I was like, who? Who is trying to get a hold of me? They said there's a family emergency, and they're trying to get a hold of you. And I was like, so called my mom. But I just remember her saying, it's Travis. He took his life, and you need to come home. And I'm pretty sure I screamed. I think that the reason I could choose to get out of bed was someone managed to put it in a way that made me believe I truly had a choice. Sometimes when you're in a really dark place, it feels like you don't have a choice. It feels like you can't. Sometimes you want to cling to feeling like you can't, because sometimes it's hard to choose otherwise, but remembering that there's always a choice. There's always a choice to get out of bed. It's not, you have to get out of bed and run a marathon today. It's not, you have to get out of bed and do so many things. It's just get out of bed. It's just take that one step. And sometimes once you finally take that one step, that's all you needed to be able to run a marathon or go to law school or do any number of things that you wanted to do. Getting past the stigma that going to therapy is weird or something is wrong with you, or that needing medication to help with depression or anxiety or any number of mental health problems makes you broken, or like nothing is wrong with you for doing that. And so one of the things I did when I was in law school, I was very open about going to therapy, and I just talked about it. And afterwards, I had a couple of different students come up to me and just say, you know, because you were so open about it and you were just willing to say it like it wasn't a big deal that you went, I realized early on I was struggling with the stress of law school, and I went in so much earlier because if you could do it, why can't I? And so I saw that people around me were getting help earlier because I was more willing to say I needed help too. And I think that's really important in our society as a whole, to take that on. And the more we are willing to be open about that, the more others who need help are going to realize it's okay for them to seek help too. And there are lots of things that people say that they mean with the best of intentions that really hurt. One of these things is everything happens for a reason. Everything doesn't happen for a reason. Sometimes things happen and there is no reason for it. But that doesn't mean you can't find a positive out of it. I did not have to lose my brothers to become a more empathetic person. I didn't have to lose them to learn how to be strong, to learn how to go on. That wasn't the reason they died, but I can choose to be strong and to be positive and learn to find those silver linings despite the negative and the difficulties that I've experienced. Another thing people say is they committed suicide. That hurts. There are only two things that people commit. Those are crimes and sins. And suicide is neither. They didn't commit a crime. It wasn't a sin. They were sick and they lost their battle with a sickness. But they fought and they tried. They just lost their lives to it. For anyone else who's in my shoes, I would never give them any platitudes of this gets better or time heals all wounds, because that's not true. You learn to live with it, and it becomes a part of you and your new normal, and it is okay to miss them every single day. And if someone in your life can't understand that, then it's okay for them to not be in your life. It's okay to cut out toxic people or people who maybe can't handle your circumstances. You don't have to fight for other people to be in your life, because the people who are meant to be there with you and for you will stay, and they will understand. Find those things that do make you happy. For me, it's dancing and being creative and painting and finding beauty. I try to find one beautiful moment in every day, and I can say that was why today was a good day. Sometimes it is as simple as an ice cold Diet Coke. Sometimes it's standing on the top of the Alps and looking out across a beautiful mountain range. Both are beautiful in their own way. And so my message would be to find the beauty.
In thinking about how you can help to reduce the stigma that surrounds mental health and suicide, I would invite you to do two things. First, use correct language. When talking about someone who has died by suicide, please refrain from using the phrases committed suicide or successful suicide. These phrases are insensitive and judgmental. Two, be kind and seek understanding in your relationships with other people. Be mindful of what may be going on beneath the surface for them, and treat them with kindness and respect.